YouTube, Antics here with the swole on the throw on, and if you need the explainer, I am the Alpha Tamer, but today it is not about me, it is about this person in front of me. Will you please introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Nicholas Devine. I'm from Kansas City, and some of you may know me by Accelerate Alpha.
Alright, so Nicholas, will you please tell us what you did today?
So today I got first place at the Dallas Regionals with Mirage. Absolutely surreal experience, I'm not gonna lie.
First place, a tremendous accomplishment. I don't know about you guys, but I have to see this deck profile. Let's get into it. Alrighty, so go ahead and show us the cards.
Alright, so this is, I'm gonna be honest, like a really standard Mirage list, but even though it's standard, it's still, I'd say, one of the most powerful decks out there, especially in this meta. But let's start with the Digi-Eggs. So, I think a lot of Mirages do run the 3 Wanyas and 1 Buka. At first, I wanted to run 4 Wanyas, just because I thought, like, the Bukamon didn't really matter. There's so much jamming you already get in the deck, but after running these 3, I found Bukamon a lot more. It honestly won me maybe around 3 games, so I definitely recommend going 3 and 1 on your Digitama. The bread and butter, I'd probably say, would be Gaomon. This card, a lot of decks you're going to play against will want to keep their hand sizes low. This is so good because you force cards into their hand. A real good combo is going Gaomon and then into the new Gaogamon level 4. And just the gaining a memory on the Inheritable is really good. I think a lot of lists don't exactly run a lot of the Gaomon searchers, but if you see the rest of my deck lists, you'll know I really just only play for consistency. A lot of people drop this for different tech cards, and I mean, I think that's fine, but if I'm not having the greatest hand, I just want as many searchers as possible. The Inheritable doesn't pop up as often, but I did use it a few times to bounce back rookies in the early game. So I'd say overall it's a pretty decent card. Next up would be 2 Gomamon. I really just ran this because 1, Magnet X, it can let you be unblockable, as well as Mother Shoutout. But I found it didn't really help in that matchup because they run a lot of analogs, so you can't raise a rookie. But I was also playing it for the Imperial to remove one of their sources and then get rid of their partition, but frankly, it didn't really happen that much. I'd say this card probably underperformed this tournament more than I thought it was going to be, but I'd still probably run it as a 2-of. Next up is the 2 Biomon blockers, which also has Inheritable jamming. I mean, it's just Inheritable jamming. You just want as many ways to get jamming, so you can go your combo of... You just always want a stack with jamming for your level 5 combo. You swing in with your level 5, become unblockable, Digivolve into Mirage, bounce a card, and unsuspend. You need the jamming when you swing in with the level 5 into security, otherwise it really hurts. Plus, it's just a 1k blocker. I mean, the blocker didn't come up too much because it's really easily killable, but I'd say 1 game, the blocker did help me win. So I would say I'd rather run this over Betamon. Definitely, unless you're running the fish combo with Huankunmon. Then you'd run Betamon, but my list doesn't. Next up, I think this is the best new addition to Mirage. The thing is, yeah, BT16 Gaogamon. So, this just, I feel like the most important part is it always guarantees you jamming, but the when Digivolving, you know, you force your opponent's hand size up, and you can also gain memory if they air more cards. It is so useful to, like, guarantee you have enough memory to go up all the way into the line. It's also very useful, especially with getting more cards, because you're essentially drawing 2 when you Digivolve instead of 1. Because a lot of times I was debating either playing, like, a training or going into Gaogamon, and it's like with the training, you search the top 2 and take a card, and you're paying 2 memory for that, or you can go into Gaogamon for 2 costs. Most likely you're going to gain a memory back, so it's only like a 1 cost Evo. And you get to draw both cards instead of like in the search where you like, you know, pick between 2. Of course, you want to search to set up, but this is still just so good. Everything about it, I'd say, is really good. Next up is the other Gaogamon from X4. You know, in the Numemon, Ukomon meta that we previously had, the when Digivolving to bounce a rookie used to be super important. I really don't think it's that important anymore. Like, it barely comes up a few times. I'd say what's really important is that it has inheritable to gain a memory. Mirage is all about setup, so if you already have a stack in the raising with jamming, you might want to Digivolve into this level 4 because it guarantees another memory gain and just makes the lines a lot smoother. Lastly, we have one of the Gaogamon. This guy, he's not very useful, but I still prefer playing him over a Tamer. He's just more cards in the archetype, especially for this Gaomon. And it comes up every once in a while where you do get to play a Tamer, but since you're only running one of him, at least in my deck, it barely comes up often. Though I will say one game went really smoothly in my opening where I raised this Gaomon, Digivolved into Gaogamon, played a Tamer, swung. Now that I had a Tamer, it activated this Gaomon inheritable. So it does work a little nicely with this Gaomon. Next up, I have 4 Mock Gaogamon saying it can't be redirected. I mean, there's a lot of Magna X's out there. There's a lot of Dex Dorugoromons with blocker. I even played against Shoutout, and this was my win condition. You have to have when attacking. You can't be redirected. I know a lot of people play 3. I was just expecting a lot of blockers, so I ran 4. And yeah, that's pretty much it for that dude. Next up, we have the one of Mock Gauga. I mean, it's a one of for a reason. It's just that good. Plus, the inheritable, it allows you to be a little bit more lenient with when you want to unsuspend compared to this Mock Gauga, where it's like, sometimes you have to work around this unsuspend compared to the one of. And lastly, for the level 5s, we have 3 Zudomon aces. I don't really ace Digivolve as much as just use him as a cheap way to hard play a level 5 that can bounce something back. It's almost like this Mock Gauga where you can remove another level 4 and just keep your opponent's board to 0. I also found him insanely useful in both the Imperial and Mother matchup. Imperial, you just gotta get rid of their partition, and I'll probably talk about the Mother matchup later. Next up with the level 6s, I mean, you can't really have it any other way. You have to have 4 of these Mirages. I know some people play one of the other level 6, but I don't, just make more space for other stuff. And I'm not really going to explain Mirage because he's just the card that makes the deck work. Everything really works around Mirage and also Burst Mode, which we're running 3 of. I mean, again, super standard. On the Tamer side, I am running 3 of the Memory Setter Thomas. Sometimes he's good at setting your opponent's hand size up, but I didn't really use him in that sense too much. Really, he's almost like another memory boost. Like, say you have like several memory boosts on the field. If you just play Thomas, you're guaranteed to going to 3. Sometimes I literally just think of him as a memory boost. And on the other point, like, you just have to have a Thomas to activate Burst Mode. And next up we have 3 of the other Thomas. I mean, at first, like, I feel like his on-play draw one doesn't seem that good, but I feel like that is such an underrated part of the card. And I mean, this Thomas is pretty much essential for going to game with your Mirage Burst Modes. You can do a lot of stuff to combo Mirage Burst Mode swinging into security, but one thing I like to do is go into Mirage, swing once, unsuspend with Thomas, bounce Thomas back, go into Mirage, swing again, unsuspend, swing, play Thomas right back out because I just added him back, and use him as another unsuspend. So in many cases, you can just use one Thomas to unsuspend twice in a single turn. Next up, as I was saying earlier, this deck is really just all about consistency, and I think we might be going off the playmat in a second, but 4 memory boosts. Consistency, consistency, consistency. I won't have it any other way. You never really break if you're just running 4 memory boosts. Next up, 4 mental trading. Yep, consistency, consistency, and Lastly, if you're not running Ice Wall in a blue deck, I'm gonna get very angry at you because this just single-handedly wins you games. Unfortunately, as a one-of, I think I only drew it twice during the whole tournament, and it was already in games where my opponent pretty much didn't raise. But in all of my place testing, Ice Wall, if your opponent isn't like losing and you have Ice Wall, you completely stall them for a turn, essentially. It is so important.
All right, thank you for taking us through. Could you tell us what your matchups were for today?
Yeah, I'd have to think about it a little bit, but in my first matchup, I went against Ancient Garurumon. Now, that is really just a race to see who goes into security faster, because one real big weakness about Ancient Garuru is they can only bounce your lowest level. So all you have to do is just go into Mirage, play a rookie, and they can barely touch Mirage at all. That's essentially what I did, and if they go into their Ancient, they have to draw a card, so you just gain even more memory and just OTK them the next turn. Mirage is like a really fragile deck, and if your Mirage sticks for like more than one turn, you're in a really good situation while it's out on the field. And especially against Ancient Guru, I mean, yeah, they can't really do much about it if you play a rookie.
Did you play a lot of Imperial today?
Yeah, so I played only 2 Imperial. I think a lot of people think it's the best deck in the format. I sort of think so as well because it has annoyed me a lot. In some ways, it can heavily counter a Mirage player, but if you know what you're doing, I'd say it's a 50-50 matchup of 2 players who are only playing the as best as possible. Zudomon is essential in that matchup. You don't want them to go into Mega, and if they do, you gotta go through really weird loops. But what you want to do is catch them when they go into Pyildramon, the level 5. You want to Digivolve into Zudomon to strip its sources and get rid of its partition, and then go into Mirage. And then you bounce a stack and they don't get Partition. Partition is what makes them really strong. The new option card, Return to the Primogenitor, is really only for being deleted. And in a deck where you only bounce, that really never comes up. It still helps them out, of course, because they get a Digivolve for less. And that can make the matchup a little weird, but not too weird. What's really annoying is they suspend everything and say you can't unsuspend. A lot of times you want to raise with your Mirage check and then start swinging for game, but you can't unsuspend, so you can just only really control until they give you an opportunity to be able to unsuspend. I actually had an insane game where I had 3 Zudomons go into 3 Mirages, and they are at 20 cards, so my opponent added a card to their hand by an effect, it automatically set me to 10 memory, but because I kept on bouncing back their Pyildramons, they just kept stunning my board. So it was like insane. I was just hard playing level 5s and letting them like suspend me until eventually I got that opportunity to go for game. In that sense, I think both decks can counter each other a lot. So in my first game against Imperial, I believe it was round 3, I actually tied. And I don't think my opponent was very happy with me about that because, you know, we're both playing fast decks, so how can they both, you know, tie? But you honestly be surprised. They shut down all of my unsuspending, and I make it to where they can hardly attack because they are forced to draw. Then I went against Imperial later on, and frankly, they were just sort of bricking, so I got that. But I still had to work for it, of course.
Awesome. So, with your ending record being X01, with you having only 1 tie and the rest all being wins, from my perspective, your deck looks pretty standard, and I know like a lot of people like to play some of the fish stuff in the deck. Is there anything you would change, or if you had to do it all over again, would you run the exact same list card for card?
I mean, I just won with this list. I'd probably run it exact.
Love to hear it.
Maybe I said take out a Gomamon, do something a little more techy. I know Betamon, not the jamming inheritable, but the other beta that says your opponent can't gain memory. I think that definitely helped in the Imperial matchup. Honestly, this Gaogamon card that plays me a Thomas barely came up, so I don't know if I'd change that. My sister is also a really big Mirage player. She got first place at a store tournament, 64 players with almost this exact same deck. And she swears by running 4 Zudomons and 3 of the can't be redirected Mangaugas. I think in this meta where we face a lot of blockers, I sort of liked the 4 Mangaugas, but I could definitely run 4 Zudos because they were definitely really important. I felt like I had to see multiple Zudos in the matchups that mattered, while for those decks, but with matchups like Magna X and Mother Control, I really only needed to see 1 of the can't be redirected Mangauga.
All right, that's great feedback. And actually, as we're on the subject, you mentioned your sister. Are there any shout-outs you'd like to give?
Yes, so I'd like to shout out a quick story, but I come from Kansas City, and of course this is my sister's deck. I wasn't exactly planning on playing it, but I didn't know what deck to play. But then my sister said she couldn't come to this regionals, unfortunately, so I literally took her deck. But I'm off in college, away from our hometown, and she needed to transport the cards here. Unfortunately, we were missing a Zudomon and a Biomon. So on our way down, I had to call up maybe 40 or 50 stores from Springfield, Missouri, Joplin, Missouri, eventually in like Dallas, Missouri. I'm not Dallas, Missouri, Dallas, Texas. And there's only one place where they actually had the cards that I needed. And the people there were so kind, especially one player who gave me a Biomon that helped me win, George. Not my coffee, is it? Or not before my coffee. So I have to give like the greatest shout out to him because he really made my deck come together.
That's awesome, man. Congratulations for your magnificent finish, and thank you for giving us the deck profile. Hope you have safe travels back home. And you guys heard it here. This was the undefeated list. Antics here with the swole on the fro on. I already gave you the explainer. I'm going to give it to you one more time. I am the Alpha Tamer. Peace.